This is the Radio Button Network. And this is the new Ace at Large podcast. Now, your host, Ace.
It's easy to say. It seems easy to say. You have to move on. People tell you that all the time. Whatever your situation is, you got to move on. But how do we move on when we're grieving? How do we move on when our life falls apart? How do we move on when our love falls apart? How do we move on from addiction? After all, overcoming it and moving on are two different things. How do we move on from a past that keeps us trapped? And how do we move on from the weight of expectations that we haven't met and can't meet? Here's the thing. From now on, we're not going to move on. We're going to move forward. It's easier said than done. But today, I'm going to give you a question that you can ask yourself. And that will always remind you it's time to let go. And it's time to move on. And it is all compliments of my son. It's a classic. You'll love it. Next.
There's more of the new Ace at Large podcast next. Welcome back to the new Ace at Large podcast.
Today is one of those days that when this podcast is over, I should be the first person. I should walk out of here, get in my truck, and be the very first person to listen to it and go back and take my own advice. I should go home and pull it up on my phone on YouTube and sit down and watch it and take my own advice. But remember, if you're here, you are not alone. We are all sharing something with each other. I am not a therapist, but I have been through a lot of therapy. Just a guy trying to navigate the world and its disappointments and its heartbreaks just like you. For me, it's a variety of things, but they include divorce, the death of my daughter 6 months ago, and quite often I don't take my own advice. Today is one of those days. Trust me on that. This is one of those things that I need to learn how to be much better at. My son asked me a question about 10 years ago on a Saturday morning that has always stayed with me as an example of exactly who he is. And I realized a while back that this is a very simple question that can serve as a marker in time that could help all of us if we do a couple of things first. It's going to sound silly. It's a dumb question. But if you are a member of the radio family, if you are somebody who is a part of the Ace at Large podcast, it will sound silly, but if you remember it and how you get to the question, it will be that marker in time when you turn the page and move on. When you turn the page, and more importantly than moving on, you move forward. Remember, we're not moving on, we're moving forward. My son is now 18 years old. He's a senior in high school. And I'm very, very proud of him. As if I wasn't proud of him enough already, as frustrating as he might be to me from time to time, since the death of his sister, he has been a rock star. He got up and spoke at her funeral that nobody expected it, and he brought the house down. He was funny and heartfelt and amazing. And my pride in him grew even more than it already was huge. My pride in him grew even more that day. And since then, he's just been the very best. He looks a lot like me. He's over 6 feet tall, red hair. When he was little, we were at a Target one day and I was holding him and a lady walked by and said, "Well, there's no denying him, is there?" No, ma'am, absolutely not. His sister was his best friend. And quite honestly, he's shown me strength I wasn't sure that he had. But he's always been a calming influence. He quietly believes that everything is going to be fine. I have called him more so when he was little, but I just kind of refer to him as boss all the time for a really weird reason too. And I wanted him when he was little to know that he could be like the man in charge. It's kind of a weird thing. Maybe I was overthinking that. I often overthink things. My son doesn't overthink anything. My son doesn't think. He just lives in this moment. And then he moves on to the next moment. And there's a lesson in that. So, to give you a little background, I spent Cade's life coaching his teams. I was a coach, either the head coach or an assistant coach, on every team that he was ever on except for one: basketball, football, baseball, And truth be told, I love it. I miss it. And on this one Saturday morning, 10 years ago, he gave us this question that we should all remember and ask ourselves. And the answer lets you know, just simply asking the question lets you know that it's time to move forward to whatever is next in your life. So let me take you back 10 years ago. My son's basketball team, he was 8 years old. It's a Saturday morning. We're playing in a championship game. I am the head coach of the team. We are down 1 with a minute left. And my son, with ice water in his veins, hits a jump shot from around the free throw line to give us the lead. We go down the other end of the floor. The other team scores. We come back down our end of the floor with 10 seconds left, maybe 11 seconds left. Cade's friend, Max, spins around and makes a shot to give us the lead. And it looks like we're going to win this game and we are going to win a championship. And the two teams then advance to the other end of the floor. And with about 4 seconds left, a kid throws up a shot that barely grazes. I mean, the angle is phenomenal. And it barely grazes the highest part of the backboard that you can legally graze. And it goes in. And, of course, they're 8 years old, so they don't exactly go the full length of the court in 2 or 3 seconds like an NBA player would. And there's about 2 seconds left on the game, and the game's over. They win by 1. We were stunned. I'm just standing there with my hands on top of my head like, I can't believe that just happened. I can't believe that kid just hit that shot. If we put that young man, who's now 18 years old as well, if we put him back in that spot and gave him 100 chances, in my heart of hearts, I firmly believe he couldn't make it again if he tried. But he did, and it happened. And these kids are heartbroken. I mean, it hurt me. I'm just a coach. I've been through this kind of stuff a million times. But this is one of the things that I think is so great about sports. It teaches you how to lose and how to win. There are lessons to be learned about whether you win or lose. So the kids start coming back. The other team is celebrating. They're jumping around. The kids are walking towards our bench, which is at the far end of the court from where they were. They have their heads down. The other kids are going crazy. Their parents are cheering. Our parents are sad. And they come off the floor, and I grab a couple of the kids, and they've got tears in their eyes, and I'm hugging them like, hey, it's okay. You pick your head up. You played your hearts out today. Didn't go our way. We didn't do anything wrong. We were just beaten. Be proud of the effort, that kind of thing. No matter how hard you try, sometimes these things happen in life. What a great lesson that is to learn. And as the kids walk toward the bench, my son has his arm around one of our players who is practically crying. He has tears in his eyes, little tears running down his face. And I look at Cade as they're coming towards me, and I have my arm around one of our players. And as they get about parallel to me, he's about 6 feet from me, I said, hey. And he looked my way. I said, hey, are you okay? And he turns to his right and looks at me and says, in the midst of all of the sadness, yes, sir. Are we going to eat? And I actually looked around like, what? Yeah, we're going to eat. He goes, all right. And he walks off with his arm around this other kid who's crying. And I've got my arm around a kid who's crying. And kids are being consoled. And I couldn't help but smile as he walked away like, that's him. That's my son in that moment. And there's a tremendous lesson within that question. We're going to eat. Without overthinking it, I think, there's a massive moment there. That's him. But it's also who we should be. I look at that moment and it captures the beauty of who I believe my son is. And I don't know where his life's going to take him. And I know he gets tired of me griping at him, and I get frustrated with him because you ask him, what do you want to do with your life? I don't know. And it makes me crazy. But quietly, there's a part of me that has always loved his ability to be in this moment right here. And what's happened has happened. And what's about to happen hasn't happened yet. So all I can do is this moment. That's the beauty of who he was in that moment. His arm around a teammate who was heartbroken. He cared for others. But when time is up, the game is over. He played well. He played well under pressure, which is one of those things that as a parent and a coach, you're so proud of him for. He played his heart out. But the game was over. So it's over. We didn't win. Sucks. Are we going to eat? And there's the lesson. That's the question. There's the question that when you find a spot to ask yourself that question, are we going to eat? That means it's time to move forward in life. Here's a review. He did all he could do that day. He played hard. He hit a shot at the end that looked like it was going to give us a chance to win. But time was up. The game was over. Time to move forward to whatever comes next. Again, so many times I turn to sports for these great life lessons because it's easy to quantify these life lessons. It's easy to wrap it all up in a nice little box and put a bow on it because there are things like scores and time, and it's easy to see the lesson that you learn. So why is this the question that we should all be asking ourselves? Why is this the lesson that I, more than others, need to learn, need to remind myself of? I mean, if anybody needs to remember, are we going to eat? It's me. It turns out it's pretty simple. Whatever the situation you find yourself in, there is a time and a place where you have to take a step forward and leave it behind. And I try to look at it this way. What did I learn about myself? What could I do better next time? Because you can't do better in a time that's already gone. What could I do better next time? How can I be better and make my situation better in the future? When you have been honest with yourself, and it's time to ask yourself one last question. And that question is, are we going to eat? If the answer is yes, it's time to move forward. Maybe you don't actually go eat. Doesn't matter. That's the question that you have to remember. Doesn't matter what you've been through. It only matters where you're going and how you're going to be better. And it's time to move forward. I know it sounds crazy, but think about it. It works for any situation, especially some of the ones that I've been through. Divorce, you look back, what'd you learn? What would you have done differently? What would you do differently next time? How can you be better and better your situation in the future? Once you've checked the boxes and answered all the questions, you can't go back in time. So all you can do is take a step forward and be better. That's when you ask yourself a simple question. Are we going to eat? That's the mindset. Are we going to eat is a very simple question that gives you the mindset to step forward in life because you've left everything else behind. Game's over. Kid hit a shot. We didn't win. I can't go back and undo it. I can't replay it. I can't change anything that just happened. I can learn from it and then step forward because it's time to go eat. That's the next thing on that day's agenda. After the game, we go eat. What's next, Cade? Time to eat. It's very simple. Divorce, it works exceptionally well. Drug addiction, alcohol addiction, bad relationships, you got fired from your job. When you have been honest with yourself, evaluated your situation, and decided how you can improve yourself from what you've learned, all you got to do is ask yourself one more question. Are we going to eat? Because now you're moving forward to whatever is next in life, and you're leaving that past behind. Sounds dumb. It is dumb. But when you put it in the right context, it's perfect. He was 8 years old, giving it no thought whatsoever. Yet, This is just the way he lives. In this moment, realizing I can't change what just happened. That's over. What's the next thing on my agenda? Eating. Why? Because I'm hungry. When? Right now. And that's his entire life. But there's a little gem that comes out of his mind that 10 years later, hopefully, I can incorporate into my life much better because I'm terrible at this. Are we going to eat? Now you're moving forward to the next thing. Now you're leaving the past behind. You've learned how you could be better. You've learned the lessons that will make you better. And there's nothing you can do to undo what's been done. So take the next step forward and go eat. And why is it so important? That's an easy answer. Next.
There's more of the new Ace at Large podcast next. Welcome back to the new Ace at Large podcast.
Still a different setting for today's Ace at Large podcast. So maybe the subject matter is a little bit different. The setting is the same. You're here. If you're here, and you are, that means you're not alone. It doesn't matter what you've been through. It only matters where you're going. How are you going to be better? And somewhere I hope you filed away that little question that my son asked me 10 years ago when he was 8 years old and lost the basketball game. Are we going to eat? Remember, there's a time and a place where you got to take the next step. And this is one of those situations where therapy was super huge in helping me move forward. Because I was just drowning in a pool of regret and I can still fix this and all this kind of stuff. Whatever your situation, there's a time and a place where you've got to take the next step and move forward. Got to ask yourself a couple of questions. What did I learn? What could I have done differently? Sometimes the answer is nothing, and that's okay. But be honest with yourself. What did I learn? What could I have done differently? What can I do to better my situation in the future? What has this lesson taught me, and how can I utilize it going forward to make my life better? Then you ask yourself that question he asked me 10 years ago when he was 8 years old. Are we going to eat? Because when you're ready to eat, you're ready to take that step forward into whatever is next in life. For him, it was probably a trip to Red Robin that day, which was his favorite place to get hamburgers when he was a little kid. For you, no telling what's next. Hopefully it's something fantastic. And it does work in any situation. Here's why it's so important, because regret is a terrible, terrible, terrible thing. Regret will weigh you down. And when you saddle your life with regret, trust me, it prevents you from moving forward to a life that's better than the life you left behind. So here's my saying for the day. In addition to remembering the question, are we going to eat? Remember this. You can't change the past. You can change the path. You can't change the past. You can change the path. Because after every one of these decisions, when you get time to decide, are we going to eat? You're at a fork in the road, and what are you going to do? Obviously, you're going to take a step forward. It's time to change the path. It's time to do something a little bit different than what you've been doing. I hope you'll remember those two things today. When you're honest with yourself, you've really looked at the situation, and you can laugh and think this is my are we going to eat moment, because that means you're moving forward in life. You can't change the past, but you can change the path. And remember, whatever it is, why ever it is that you're here, whatever you're going through, one day you will tell your story of how you've overcome what you're going through now, and it will become part of someone else's survival guide. And that is all we can ask for. to have the opportunity to make ourselves better and help someone else. That's why I'm here. Because my daughter died and I wanted to make myself feel better by hopefully helping someone else along the way. And today, I hope that was you.
This is the new Ace at Large podcast. The new Ace at Large podcast will be back next Thursday.